Here's a crash course on James Fowler's faith stages. First, we start at Primal Faith. This is infants, and it's really just a basis for trust. Next, we have Intuitive Projective Faith. This is generally found in early childhood. This involves perception, feelings, imaginative fantasy, and the child then is forming images and archetypes, and faith has a magical quality to it. The next step is Mythic Literal Faith. This is childhood and beyond. Now we've got stable categories of space, time, and causality. It's less magical thinking, but still concrete and one-dimensional. In this case, narratives are quite important. A sense of reciprocity and fairness play heavily. Next, we have synthetic conventional faith. This is found in adolescence and beyond. Here, comprehension and values are reordered, and there's a breakdown of the moral principles of reciprocity. Abstract concepts and ideas are constructed. Perceptives of others are integrated, and the synthetic terming there is drawing on the different elements together, creating an identity. The next step is individuative reflective faith. This is found pretty much only in adulthood. Here we're redefining elements of faith and identity, and we are critical in choosing beliefs, values, and commitments. The fifth stage is conjunctive faith. This is found mostly midlife through to late adulthood. There's a conscience of opposites and integration of elements and experiences that seem to be contradictory, acknowledging and accepting the complexity of life in the world, and there's often a humble attitude and an acceptance of paradoxes, and quite often a second naivete for symbols and myth, not requiring them to fit into logical or explainable categories. And the final stage, which Fowler himself recognizes as quite rare, he calls universalizing faith. And this is a decentralization form of self, knowing the world through the eyes of others, or possibly through the eyes of God or a deity or some supreme energy. And there's a very different valuing.
There is so many things we can say about faith, and there's also so many ways to see faith. And I would like to share maybe my point of view on what faith is not. So faith is not a spiritual Tylenol that you will take and all your problems will vanish. Faith is not agreeing with dogmas. Faith is not some rules that you get into, or there's no rules, if you will, with faith. Faith is not religion. Faith is not a way to manipulate God. Oftentimes we say, I've prayed and I've loved you and I asked you this and it didn't happen. And that is not necessarily faith. Faith is not hope nor a positive desire. Hope is good and relates to the future. Faith, however, takes the promise of God right now. It is a sense of well-being, of assurance right now at the moment. Hope has to do with the future. Many people have hope and anxiously are looking for the future, for that hope to happen and to come to fruition. And actually that is good, that's hope, but that's not faith. Faith for me is like a diamond. It has many different facets, many different angles that we can see it, and also it can shine in many different ways and has multiple colors and multiple aspect to it. So, and I believe also that a healthy faith is a faith that always shines brighter and brighter, and where we see all the different angles. So for me, this workshop is important because it calls all of us, myself and Greg included, to rethink our faith and to see it in different angles as much as make it shine on different angles. So I hope that this workshop is going to help you see things differently and see the faith stages not necessarily as stages like this, but rather as faith states, as in a circle where you are here, here, or here, and then it goes. It's like a wheel. So it's also a way of seeing the faith stages as in states. And I'm going to lead you, not lead you, but leave you on this. And I hope you enjoy your conversation today. Okay, Greg, I have a question for you. What would you say that these faith stages or these faith states would say about God or who God can be?
I think faith stages for me say more about who humanity is than specifically who God is. But if we look at it from faith stages direction, you see that everybody interacts with God in their own way. Everybody's understanding of who God is and what the relationship is between them and God, well, that really diverse. It's very diverse from one faith stage or one faith state to another. And I think it speaks about how broad God is, how God's big enough to handle all of these different understandings, to handle all of these, whether it's somebody who sees God extremely abstractly or somebody who takes a look at the Bible and finds the real meaning in the literalness. God's there for all those people. I think God is big, broader than any of us can understand, willing to take in and to take on and to have relationship with anybody, no matter what their faith stage is.
Can you tell me, according to you, what faith is not? We often talk about what faith is, but what, according to you or your understanding, what faith is not?
I think sometimes we mix up faith and religion. Religion to me is more about a set of rules and constructs, dogmas and understandings. Religion is something made up by people. But faith, it's not a thing. It can't be described. Faith is about a relationship, about who is God to you, or what is the higher being? What's your relationship? How does God interact with you, and how do you interact with God? That's what faith is to me. I think sometimes the word belief gets mixed up with faith as well. Belief, you can believe in somebody else. You can say, hey, I believe in you, saying you've got confidence in them, but faith is something much deeper than that. Faith is believing things you can't see. Maybe even believing things that seem to argue with your sense of reason. That's faith.
Okay, can you tell me, according to you, what would be the how these faith stages can help us in our faith journey? How can these faith stages be useful in understanding our faith and moving on with it, bringing it into action and things like that? So, what do you think, Greg?
I think any of us who are in a faith relationship with God, I think any of us can really benefit from faith stages of the people around us. No different than in any other social or cultural situation. We often surround ourselves with people who think the same, or look the same, or choose the same hobbies. But in a faith situation, if we make sure that there are people around us who are of different faith stages than us, I think we can all really benefit. Let's say, for example, I have a very literal understanding of the Bible, and a good friend of mine is very abstract in their faith state. The relationships, the discussions that we can have about what we believe about the Bible are going to be very strong and very good opportunities for learning for each one of us, where perhaps my literal understanding gives me an opportunity to dig deeper into literal translations of words and discovering some more of the historical fact that help me base my faith. if I share those details with my friend who is quite abstract, then perhaps she's going to bring in some of the broader topics that a very close, magnified version of the Bible isn't going to bring out. So we can learn from each other. We can all grow. And this is one place where I know that we like to call them faith stages rather than states. Because the idea of this is one place where I think we want to call them faith states rather than faith stages. Because stages suggest that you're moving always from one to another up through a ladder to get to the better or to get to the higher one. But I don't think that's it at all. I think that people of stage 5 can very much benefit from taking a strong look at somebody or a conversation with somebody who's at a stage 4, because the differences are where the strengths are going to lie. So Marco, we've been taking a look at different faith stages and recognizing some of the differences between them. I wonder if you can give us an example of why someone might want to stay in one faith stage or one faith state.
Well, I believe that someone would want to stay in a faith stage for many different reasons, but one of them could be reassurance, or if you will, kind of control, because we know that we like to have God in a box where in that box everything is contained, and all that we need to know, or all that we need to know about God is in that box. So we don't have a lot of efforts to do. So it's really reassuring that, okay, God is A, B, C, and D, and when I do A, he does this, and when I do B, he does this, and so on. So it's very comforting to stay and want to stay in that box. Also, when not in that box, but in that faith stage. Also, when stress comes, we have a tendency to go into what we know, to get reassured. Just like the law of gravity, we know that we can go back to God, and God is this, and that. But sometimes it can be very dramatic to think that God does this. And for example, and I'm segueing into your second question, is that someone had a very narrow way of seeing God. I have to obey God. If I don't, this is going to happen. Some kind of a God of retribution, if you will. And then his son got very, very sick, to the point where his son died, a little boy. And he came to me and very distressed, and you would understand how distressed someone, a parent, losing a child is tragic. And he came to me and he thought, what did I do? I always was trying to please God and always there to pray God and have faith and all this. And my son passed away. And I don't understand. He did this to correct me, but correct me from what? And what did I do to deserve this? And I said to him, you know what? I don't believe God killed your son. Personally, I don't think of a God like that. That's not the God I serve, and that's not the God I love either. And I said to him, God is not the author of bad things. He's always in what is good and loving. And all through this, the sickness of your son, he was always there, supporting you, his hand on your shoulder, smiling. God is that kind of mother that is only loving and that is only caring. And, when we cry, we go to God, and like a loving mother. And all we care is that we can be in the arms of our mother. And I said, that's the same thing that happened to you. God was there all along, taking care of you. God was always caring. And I could see in his face peace coming, because he thought he did something wrong and he was getting punished. So seeing this, I saw the faith stage, and faith stages, we go from one faith stage to another with dramatic event, and that was a very dramatic event that I don't wish on anyone. And but out of that, he got out of a faith stage that was detrimental to him into a place where he was having a healthier relationship with God, where God was someone he could count on and someone that was there for him, not just a punisher or a vengeful God.
We've got different faith stages and people at different places in their life journeys, their faith journeys. I wonder, Marco, if you have a personal example of when faith stages bumping up against each other can cause difficulty.
Yes. Actually, maybe I'd like to start by saying that I don't see necessarily the faith stages as in steps like this, but I see them more as seeing different facets of a diamond. You know, you see like the different colors and all that. So maybe that said, sometimes when you do have a conversation with someone that see another facet of the diamond, it is the same thing, but we see it in different angles. And I remember one time I was talking with a friend, and he was telling me that the Bible was literally the Word of God, you know, and that there was no way around it, and everything that we needed to know or that God needed to tell us was in the Bible. And I proceeded to tell him that actually the way I see and live my Christianity and also the Bible was more on seeing that the people that wrote the Bible were inspired by God. And when we read the Bible, we find that same inspiration, that same word of God, in the sense that God is talking to us through inspiration. So, but it was really hard for me to have a conversation with that person because there was just no way around it. The Bible was the literal word of God, and that's what he was told, and that's what he was acting like, you know. And I find that we couldn't get any word edgewise or any other way. So yeah, that was kind of that was tough, I must say. That was difficult. Instead of respecting my point of view, and it was really not like that. So that's probably what my answer would be to you.
I think this might actually be an extension on to my first question. So we recognize that faith stages are something we hang on to fairly tightly, but we've also read a few places, especially Fowler was quite clear that moving from one state or faith stage to another can be very hard on somebody. It can be emotional. In fact, I think at one point he described it as catastrophic. I wonder if you'd be able to flesh that out. Could you explain that a little better for us, please?
That's a good question. Very good question, actually. Maybe going back to the diamond facets that I was telling you about, when it can be catastrophic because, for example, when we go from stage 3 to stage 4, we have to stop relying on external cues or external people that or authority, and relocate this authority into a God, really. And that's what Fowler is saying. And that can be catastrophic in the sense that you know, when all your life you've been to the same church with the same people and all that, and you've always been told the same things, and then all of a sudden you realize that you cannot, that you have to put your trust into God and not into people, that you have to go back inside as opposed to rely on outside, and that can be very catastrophic or very life challenging because it's almost like your value system is falling apart. Also, it can be catastrophic or very emotionally charged in the sense that some symbols that we've always had and relied on, or this mythology that we have constructed God in our faith on is disconstructed, it can be demoralizing. It's like saying goodbye to a good friend, or saying goodbye to a way of life, to embrace a new one. Of course, so in everything that we lose, we gain something else, but also we have to grieve. So I would say that it can be difficult for someone going from one phase to another in that. Fowler explained that very well also.
We would like to thank you for going on this journey with us, exploring faith stages. You've heard us describe some of faith stages. You've got some reading materials there with you to take a look at. And also we've bounced back and forth some questions. And now we're going to leave you with a few questions or activities. First, we'd like you to make a list of words that for you are contrary or contradictory to the word faith. And beside each one of the words in your list, identify an emotion that word elicits for you. Secondly, we'd like you to go to the webpage unsplash.com. You should be able to follow a link right here to get there. It's a collection of images, and we'd like you to go through those images and find one or two that describe or visually display faith to you, and then explain to us why. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you soon in another episode of The Loquacious Lay Ministers.